Welcome to Beyond the School Gate. For those of you who are new around here, my name is Ruth, and this podcast aims to share the varied experiences of women in leadership, to talk about what we do beyond the school gate, the good, the bad, and the funny.
So, how are you, Katy? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm good. I'm a bit tired. It's Christmas. I've only done one day of Christmas shopping, so I've got a lot more to do.
So I like to kick off the podcast just by asking the guests how we know each other.
Ooh, how do we know each other? We work together. We work together at Central Ambulance. Am I allowed to name it?
Yes, you are.
So we met in 2015. Is that right? Wow, yeah, 2015. So I think I started there in September 2015. And you were the first person I met.
I remember when you came in.
Yeah, I think we had coffee in the basement.
Yep.
Yeah, and we worked together for a year, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That seems like a lifetime ago, doesn't it?
It really was, though. That was the same year I got married.
Oh, wow.
I got married in May of that year and then started that job in September. So
wild.
And that is, so I guess we last worked together 6 years ago. So
that's wild. And when we worked together, you hadn't had your beautiful boy. Gosh.
No.
You weren't living where you were now?
No. I like that. Everything's changed, yeah. So
that's wild.
Yeah, life is quite different.
I remember the first time I saw you. Sorry, say that again.
You weren't living in Australia either.
No, I wasn't. I think even when we met, I must have been in Stockwell. I think I'd moved from Lambeth north to Stockwell. And I remember the first time we met, I remember Wendy, I think she must have been running late or she was in a meeting or something and you'd arrived and reception called up and I was like, oh, pick me. I'll go down and say hello because I was just so happy to have like another peer. I was like, yay, someone new to the team. Because I mean, everybody that was sitting in our pod, I managed or somebody else managed. So it was nice to have another peer. So I was like, yay. And then I just remember meeting you and I was like, oh my God, she's awesome. Because I wasn't part of the recruitment process to recruit you. I was like, oh my God. I remember saying to Wendy, good choice. She's so good.
Oh, you're buttering me up now.
So when I think of Katy, I think of commitment, dedication, focus, passion, and compassionate as well. And I also think that a lot of who we are now is a result, directly or indirectly, of a lot of our formative years. So can you just tell us a little bit about your background and your childhood?
So I am Yorkshire born and bred. I'm very proud of it. So I grew up in York, which is like a tiny, tiny city. I think it's probably just about a city in the north of England. My quite straightforward family, like mum, dad, sister. Just quite boring, I guess. My entire family are scientists. I'm the only non-scientist in my family. But yeah, actually, because you obviously sent the questions over, and it really made me think. I was like, oh, what would I say about this? This is really interesting. So yeah, my entire family are scientists, and I'm the only person that isn't at all. But also, I think my family background, my dad's from the north, my mum's from the south. So I guess in that way, I've always had I don't have a northern accent. I've got rid of it. I can sometimes do quite a good one if I'm a little bit drunk. I'm quite a product of both of them and their backgrounds. So the one thing I would say about my parents is that they're very kind of socially conscious and justice and kind of, I've always grown up knowing right and wrong, and one of those things is kind of that equality and community and things like that are really important. But one thing I think I've reflected on quite a lot over the past probably 5 to 10 years is that my mum was way more feminist than I ever thought.
Oh, interesting.
She didn't work, right? So you wouldn't have thought, she doesn't count herself as a career-y person or a particularly driven person. Like, she doesn't feel sad that she didn't work or anything. And that, it's the early 80s, so it's quite normal for her not to work. But actually, when we talk about things in the news or in politics or whatever, like the kind of social justice stuff comes out from both my parents, like equality, the environment, social situation of like, the way the country is. But actually, when I talk to my mum about certain things, like, she's really feminist. And I'd always wondered where I'd got that from. I remember being at university and someone saying, because I was doing some women's history, because I found it really interesting from a social point of view, women's history is basically social history and men's history tends to be like political or whatever. And I remember someone saying, oh, you do all this women's history because you're a lesbian. I was just a bit like, well, no, like, wouldn't matter if I was, but I'm not. But, I've never really known where it came from. I just think my mum's always like drip fed me this stuff, and only now do I really appreciate that's where it came from. So I think it's really interesting to reflect on kind of where you come from. But I think also the other thing is, like, because obviously we'll talk about quite a lot about like work related stuff later on, but my parents came from quite different backgrounds. So my mum's from quite a traditionally working class background, and a background where I think if she's been quite honest about it, she'd say, they didn't grow up with a lot and they were kind of okay, but not, and my dad came from, I guess, quite a middle class background. He went to private school. He went to boarding school, in fact, so, like, they came from such different backgrounds, but they had quite similar like beliefs about society and, social stuff and politics and stuff. So I think, it's kind of odd that comes together in that way,
Yeah.
But
how did they meet? They sound quite different. How did they meet?
My dad was at university in Sussex, in Brighton, and my mum was a lab technician. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
My parents had moved just out of London to kind of in between London and Brighton, so she was working there. And so they met at university in Brighton, but my mum wouldn't have counted herself as being at university because she worked there.
Yeah, wow, that's wild. I love that. I love hearing about parent stories and how they met and what that looked like. And that's just,
they actually got married within 6 months of meeting.
Wow.
Well, 6 months of going out together, because I guess they'd worked together for a bit, but and they had to get married because my dad was doing he's becoming a doctor in biology, and part of that process is doing a postdoc. So you do a postdoctoral kind of post placement or posting, I guess, and his was in America. And so the only way for them to stay together was for them to get married and my mum to go with him.
Oh my gosh.
Insane.
How things have changed now, right?
I know. Yeah. I mean, partly because you just do the long distance thing, right? Wouldn't you? Because it was so much easier. You just couldn't fly transatlantically really regularly there. But insane. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. But isn't it insane? So when my dad proposed to my mum, my nanny, my mum's mum, called him to check that he meant to, because they felt that he was from a different social class.
Oh, wow. That's wild.
Isn't that insane? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what they thought. But the other thing I've been really into, and like, I think partly because there's been some stuff on the telly recently, is my grandfather, so my mum's dad, was a commando in the war and was actually invited to join the SAS when they set it up. So that's like hardcore. That's like, what kind of steely stuff am I made of, really?
Like, this is making so much sense now, right?
Are you telling me I could literally parachute into a war zone and go, like, am I that tough? Hopefully there's a little bit of it. I don't actually want to do that, but hopefully there's a little bit of grit in me. Like, I'd like to think that, if I had to.
Look, I've seen you in some difficult situations, and you're definitely pretty ballsy. So I would definitely say there's some legacy there for sure. For sure. Some of the stuff that we navigated towards the end of our time working together, I was not easy at all. So 100% there's some legacy stuff there.
I'll take that grit.
Yeah. And so you're a mum now. How
I am.
amazing is that?
Yes.
I remember when you told me when you said told me that you were pregnant, the first thought that came into my mind, I remember us sitting in Farringdon, we were having coffee, and I remember we were talking about kids and having kids, and I think I was probably banging on about my experience about being a teenage parent. And I remember you saying talking about children, and I remember you saying, I wonder if I love my child as much as I love my cat. So when I was putting the question set together, it took everything in me not to put that in as a question, but I feel like I owe it to myself. I have to. Where are we on the cat and kid vibes?
You know, the guilt I feel towards my poor cat. So I think, all started in pregnancy, right? Because she can obviously tell, because cats can tell when you're pregnant. Apparently they can smell your hormones. But I had quite bad sinusitis, rhinitis in pregnancy from my second trimester onwards. Compounded then made worse by the fact that I had COVID in my second trimester. So at the beginning of the pandemic here, I think I caught it from my midwife. Not ideal. So she couldn't, I was coughing, I was having to sleep sitting upright. She didn't want to come anywhere near me. And then obviously as I just got bigger and bigger and bigger, there was nowhere for her to sit. And then this awful screaming little thing came into her life. She was banished from our bedroom because you're not supposed to have cats in the same room as babies.
Yep.
But it's really interesting. So the one story, when I think back to the early days of when Jasper had just been born, and Mia was being she's going through this huge transition of hell. I mean, I think we were going through a similar one, but for different reasons, obviously. She Will literally had to drag her. She had a claw stuck into our bedroom carpet, dragging her out of our room. And we were like, oh my God, what is going on? How is she this desperate to stay? It's not the first time, we've kept her out and everything. No idea what's happening. In the middle of the night, I woke up and I was having quite a few problems feeding and stuff. And I literally thought that my dream was that, when you have nipple shields to help you with breastfeeding, I thought that they were rolling along my arm. And this is how crazy it was. I woke up to find a mouse running along my arm and then jumped into the cot with Jasper, who was luckily at the other end of the cot. And me just going, and that was the whole reason why the cat
wanted to stay.
Because she wanted to catch the mouse. And since then, whenever she's being a bit odd, we've gone, where's the mouse? And about a year ago, we had to actually get a proper mouse catcher in because there were so many mice in the house.
Oh my God. And I like to think that was her trying to protect Jasper.
Yeah, or just eat the mouse.
No, she was trying to protect the
Yeah, so she definitely, she probably will make an appearance because Jasper's upstairs. She tends to bomb all of my calls because then Jasper's not usually around, because his thing at the moment is to shout whenever he shouts, cat, cat, and she goes, what the hell, I'm off. I'm like, come on, go gently, be quiet. And he's like, cat. So, their relationship is still on a slow burn, I think.
Okay. And she was the princess of the house, right?
Yeah, she was my first baby.
Yeah.
She's always been really clingy, and she's always slept on me and been my little buddy, and it is really hard. But yeah, I do love my son more than my cat.
Oh, yay! I won't tell her, don't worry.
Probably is. She's in the kitchen having a tea.
So obviously, we go through phases and we go through seasons, just as human beings. In regards to how motherhood has potentially changed you, are there kind of key things that you think about that you think, yeah, I'm definitely this way because I'm now a mum, or I think differently or do things differently?
Yeah, I think I'm definitely more tired.
How old is he? Remind me again.
So he was 2 at the beginning of September, so he's kind of 2 1/4, I guess, something like that. so he kind of sleeps through the night, but he also like can have his moments, and he does wake up
Yeah.
early or he doesn't wake up early, and it's so unpredictable, and it's not like
Mhm.
being child
Mhm.
where you have way more control over your own sleep schedule. Yeah, how have I changed? So I think yeah, it's harder. I'm more tired, and I think also I have less time. All of these things people told me before I had a child, so you know it was to be expected. But I do think it's more tiring. I have much less time, and it is much harder than anyone could ever communicate. But
Isn't it?
it's also
Yeah.
awesome. So would I change anything? No, absolutely not. I think a couple of things that have really surprised me that have changed me. So one is I think I'm a calmer parent than I thought I would be.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Like I guess my relationship with him is much calmer. Like obviously there's
Mhm.
times when I'm just put your shoes on.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's about conversation with him. It's about
Mhm.
saying, hey buddy, like it's time to go to nursery. You know, we've got to get in the car, or we've got to get in the buggy, and we've got to get on the bus. So mummy's going to put her shoes on. So Jasper's going to put his shoes on. And actually, it's those kind of conversations that really surprised me, where I'm being way more reasonable than I thought I would be, and way
Mhm.
calmer. And actually, I think it's awesome for our relationship. And I think that surprised me.
Mhm.
Yeah. So like, I have a lower threshold for like fanning around, faffing, not doing things, and just
Yep.
generally people being not honest. And I had a pretty low tolerance for like, I expect honesty. Like I prefer blunt honesty anyway. When people are like, give me the political answer or trying to be diplomatic or whatever,
Tough time.
I expect it with a bit of compassion and like
Mm.
respect. And you know,
Yeah.
if someone's just being an arse, then I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bit like the protective mama bear. Like, don't mess with me. I haven't got time for this.
Mhm. Mhm.
But also, I think it's just probably exacerbated the fact that I'm a bit tired and I'm probably
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Just cut to it.
yeah. But then, like, I think the other thing is like specifically because I work in the charity sector and I work with parents and I work with children, and some of the things I'm really passionate about, I'm way more impatient for that change.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I'm really thankful for what I have, which is I have a healthy son. Touch wood, things stay that way. I have an awesome child who, you know, we've been through absolute hell. Like, you know, he born, you know, not quite in a lockdown, but kind of in a lockdown. We had serious feeding issues. He dropped from the 91st centile to the second centile within 6 weeks. Like we have had some really, really horrific times, but we've come out the other side of it. And some of that is because of me just being like, no, you sort this out, and you really fought for it. But some of it's also because of the situation that he was born into. You know, we're in London, we've got the health service, it's free. Yeah, it's like crippled. You know, they're really struggling because of, you know, whatever, all of the situations that are surrounding the world at the moment. But there's so many things there that meant that, you know, he's doing really well. He goes to a brilliant nursery, and we're so lucky that there is such an awesome nursery. Like, it's not right around the corner, unfortunately. We do have to travel a bit to get to it, but it is brilliant, and they love him, and he's happy, and he's, you know, they've taught him how to tidy up. I'm just chuffed with that. And he says please, and he says thank you, and it's the little things where you go, actually, socially, you've learned that that's an important thing, and I'm pretty impressed with you. And you know, he'll sit and sing Christmas carols in the bath to me. I'll take that as well.
Oh, so sweet.
You know, like all of those things are so lucky, and they're the little things that make my
Yeah.
day and my life
Mhm.
like lovely. But they're also the things that where, you know, I hear a story about something happening, or, you know, like a mum turned up to Babyzone a couple of weeks ago and she didn't have a coat on, and it was -3 outside. And she brought her children into a, you know, lovely warm place so she could hang out with them and spend some quality time with them in an amazing environment, and do some great stuff with them. But, you know, she didn't have a coat and she did that for them. And so it's that stuff where I'm like, this isn't okay.
Yeah.
This just isn't okay. And it's that impatience for like the nursery workers that are being paid nothing, but yet teaching my child to say please and thank you. And it's the mums that have got to go through that circumstance to get the best for their child. And that's the stuff that makes me like pretty angry. I always had a bit of anger in me about this stuff as well.
Yeah.
But I think I'm more angry about it. And so I think, you know, it's not just I'm seeing it, it's that I can see what, you know, being comfortable gives me, and then I can see the difference between that and that position of privilege is like actually quite terrifying. So
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I'm really like exploring in my own head at the moment is when I was a manager before, I had Jasper, and I thought I was quite caring, like I cared about people quite a lot. I cared about how they were doing, and I cared about their well-being, and I cared about the progression, their development, and I still do care. But what I'm exploring in my head is like, how much caring capacity do I have? Like, I've got a really small team at the moment, so I'm not worried about that. But as a manager, when you've got someone else, you know, a tiny little being who's, you know, like actually dependent on you, that's a terrifying thing to say. He's very dependent on me. Like, how do you make sure the love goes around and that you're able to continue to be like the kind of caring person that you were before? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I'm still
completely.
quite a lot, but I think it's really important. I don't think being a mother makes me care more or less, but how do I like share it around? Like, how much caring is there to go around, I guess?
Yeah. And also before you start depleting your own resources as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how do you like keep all of those plates balanced and not end up in a mess on the floor somewhere?
It's really hard.
Yeah, so I think all of that has changed me a lot. I think I was working in early years, you know, as an early years charity before I had Jasper, and I'm doing the same now. So I think the other amazing thing is it's way easier to talk to moms.
Yeah, okay.
Way easier. And it's way easier to talk to children. Like people I don't know's children. I mean, people I know's children as well. But it's so much easier, like, you know, to have that conversation. If someone says, oh, you know, I've had loads of mums walk in and say, you know, they're this age, but they're a lot smaller because, you know, they were premature or whatever. And you can go, you know, but that's, you know, that's fine. They can do this and this. And you can be way more reassured that you kind of, I mean, I don't get it. Jasper wasn't premature, but I kind of, you know, everything is okay. And you can reassure them from a position of knowing that everything's going to be okay because you're here and we're here and like nothing matters. We're not going to judge you for anything. Just relax. And I can say that with way more confidence than I think I would have done. And that's a nice position to be in.
Yeah.
I think.
And that means a lot for people as well. Connecting with somebody who's able to give that to them is life-changing for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really is. Wow.
Yeah.
And you spoke about having a baby kind of in the pandemic, and again, I was reflecting back on some of our conversations that we had about parental leave, and you being a massive advocate, and not just if I've got to do the work, you've got to do the work. It was more of the child's relationship with their dad is equally as important as their relationship with their mum. And I always remember you being an advocate for that. So what did parental leave end up looking like for you and your husband and your beautiful baby?
Yeah, so obviously, like anyone who, I mean, it's hard anyway, right? It's hard anyway. But I think in lockdown, there were so many things that were just a little bit harder. So like family could only come and visit. Like our parents are quite old, they're all retired, so we had to be quite careful about COVID and, you know, were they coming down, where did they stay, you know, all that stuff was hard. So, you know, they all met Jasper within like the first month from being born, but then they didn't see him until I think March. So yeah, basically by 6 months, because, you know, we were locked down for Christmas, you know, all that stuff. So actually it was actually, you know, that kind of the stuff they say about having a village around you was hard. Yeah, so it could have gone anyway, but I had this idealistic view that I was going to spend maternity leave seeing all the friends that had moved out of London for lunch, because they all worked in London still. And, you know, I'd spend my time traveling around the country, seeing all these people, hanging out with Jasper, you know, being like, you know, like this kind of little traveling duo of seeing people. And I even thought that his first Christmas when I was on maternity leave, we'd go and, because my sister lives in the States, we'd go and like stay with her for a month. Yeah, obviously, none of that happened at all. So not only was like I wasn't able to travel, but also none of my friends were working in London. They were all working at home and they didn't live in London anymore.
Ah, yes.
So yeah, and then all of that stuff that, you know, I thought I'd do, and this speaks a lot again to my privilege, is the mum and baby classes, you know, things you're gonna do.
Yep.
None of that happened because they weren't running and it was all online.
Oh, yes. So they did stuff online.
Yeah, but it was hard with a little baby.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like you were doing like a Zoom call where, I mean, with NCT, we did a Zoom call, you know, and you got all the faces and you get to know everyone. But the classes were literally like you were watching the class happen. So they were, I mean, I only did 2, right? Because I found them so weird.
Yeah.
But like, it wasn't like you got chatting to mums. So I did one in-person class with some people in my NCT. And that was that was when I realized this was Jasper was 6 weeks old. And it was like a sing and sign kind of thing. And I realized that one of our NCT groups, her son, who was born 2 weeks before Jasper, 3 weeks before Jasper, was double the size of him.
Oh, wow.
And had I not gone to that class and gone to myself, I need to get him weighed, I wouldn't have realized that he dropped. I mean, he looked skinny. I knew that, but the difference without that, I don't think I would have realized.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I think going to that class literally saved his life.
Yeah.
In my view, right?
And he dropped from the 90 something to the what? The
91st centile. So he was like what, just over 4 kilos, 9 pounds, to the 2nd centile by the time he was 6-7 weeks.
Oh, wow.
He was just feeding and feeding and feeding for hours. Like we'd just sit here feeding, but he obviously wasn't, it wasn't working. It wasn't nourishing him. And he was diagnosed with failure to thrive by the consultant. So yeah, like really, like if we hadn't gone to that in-person class, like, it's insane. And that there was just this little bit of like the UK opening up a little bit towards the end of 2020, and then we locked down again, obviously. But if that hadn't happened, like, I just don't know where we'd be. Like it's really terrifying to think. But yeah, so there was that kind of side of it of like being a mum, and it was unexpected and it was hard, and you know I didn't have that village. Like that village is so important, and it sounds like such a cliche, but everyone says it. You know, it is true.
So important.
Everyone who looks into the research, everyone who talks about mums in the community and parents generally, it's so important. So it was quite isolating. You know, I was lucky because we'd done NCT, which, you know, was brilliant in terms of like the friends and the connections that we got from it. But when I think about like we used to go for a walk like once a week together, and you'd literally be walking around a freezing park with a load of screaming children, and then one of them would poo and you'd have to go home, or you'd need to feed them. And you know, I remember because Will was working at home at the time, and which you know, we'll talk about the benefits of that in a sec, but there was a point when he was like, "Stop bugging me," and I was like, he was like, "What would you do if I wasn't here? Like, I wouldn't be here. What would you be doing?" And I was like, "I wouldn't be here either. Like, I'd be doing other things." You know, I think about lots of other friends who like spent their whole time in cafes with their, you know, their mum friends or pubs, or, you know, whatever, or they were just out all the time. And that was the situation, was like we were just stuck together, and you know, we'd do like 1 or 2 meetups a week, and then you know that would be it, and it would be freezing cold because we were only allowed to do stuff outside. But actually the life-changing thing that we did was you could do this thing where in the UK you could be in a bubble. So you had a child that was under 1, I think, you could bubble up with another household. So it was like household to household, and we bubbled up with a couple from our NCT.
Okay.
And, you know, they were also like in London, but family didn't live in London. They didn't have family close. And that was life-changing, because suddenly you went from like 1 to 2 cold walks around a park to 1 to 2 cold walks around a park, but also 1 play date at ours, 1 play date at theirs, and a Sunday roast every weekend.
Something to look forward to.
And it was amazing, because we were doing things indoors, like the way you could just relax because you weren't freezing, you know, all that stuff, because it was really, you know, it was chilly, and it was hard, and that just, I mean, that was just life-changing. And sanity wise, I can't even overstate how important it was.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that you know, that was important. But I think the other thing that I do feel lucky about in terms of the lockdowns and the experience is that Will was here. And in my wildest feminist kind of, you know, equality driven beliefs, I couldn't have imagined how important that's been, because, you know, Will had you know, we both had quite, you know, full-time jobs before the pandemic, but Will's was, because Will's in journalism, he had a very like, you'd be in before 9 and you would work hard and you would leave at 6, you know.
Yeah, right.
And he was doing that, but he was at home, and what that meant was he would get up with Jasper in the morning, I would lie in, and I had a shower every morning in maternity leave. Like, so few mums can say that, but it was one of those important things about feeling like myself, and I still thank him to this day for that. But sometimes he would do the lunchtime nap, so I could have a break, you know. So like, he would do, if Jasper wasn't sleeping, he would deal with him so I could have a break. And then he was there for bath time and every bedtime. And in terms of the workload split, even now, when, you know, we're hybrid, we're still hybrid working, you know, we do a combination, but it's totally 50-50.
Love it.
And it's amazing. Like, it is truly amazing. And I think for that, it gives us both like equal say in like how we parent. It gives us equal responsibility. Like, Will's actually really great at cleaning the kitchen, it turns out.
Who knew?
So it's not even just like the parenting, it's the household. Like, we run it together in a way that, because I'd always had more flexible roles than Will had before, you know, like as kind of, you know, busy but more flexible, so I could work from home more. So, you know, a lot of that kind of additional admin would often fall to me, even though, you know, before we were childless, it, you know, kind of didn't matter to some extent. I genuinely don't think I'd be able to do the job I can do now if we weren't doing like this 50-50 parenting split, because, you know, I have, you know, a kind of more senior role than Will now that I'm a CEO, in terms of, you know, like seniority within an organization, much smaller organization, a little bit different. But, you know, the pressure and the expectation on me is now much higher than it was. And if I constantly had to drop Jasper off at 8 a.m. and then, you know, if I pick him up much later than 5:30, he doesn't really sleep and he can be a bit of a pain. So we, you know, we have to balance that, and we have to make sure that sometimes one person does drop off, sometimes one person does pick up. But, you know, if we weren't able to do that balance, and I was just doing all of that because Will's expectation was being in the office because that nothing had ever changed, or, you know, or you have a really hard long day and then you got to do bath and put down by yourself. Like, how does I again, I'm so lucky. I don't know how anyone does. I don't know how anyone does that totally by themselves. And you know, I can't get over how lucky I am and the privilege that has come with the situation that and lots of people don't have that, and I know that. I'm very aware of it. But that's also why I think it's so important that I talk about it being achievable. You know, both of us have had promotions since Jasper's been born, and we've, you know, gone to work, you know, and, you know, it's not just me having, because I've got a new job in a new organization, but Will also had a promotion in that time. It's not unrealistic, but I just think people need to, you know, it's hard being a parent. You've got things to juggle, you've got a tiny person to juggle, you've got someone whose needs are entirely different to the workforce. And anyone can say, you know, the workforce and productivity are really important. Yeah, but so is building the next generation to pay for everyone else's healthcare and your pension and all of that stuff. And if we can't show them that they are valued at this point, when are we going to do that? Because the cycle is just going to keep going otherwise. And people, you know, people are stopping having children already because it's hard
Yeah.
enough. It costs enough. And, you know, if you want someone to pay for your pension and be working when you're 60, 70, 80, private pension or state pension doesn't matter.
Yep, that's it. And I think, look, there's a lot of there's a lot of negatives, obviously, to come out of COVID. Like, it's just awful, and I think nobody saw it coming. But I think there are some positives, and I think some of them are that flexible. I think organizations, some roles, I think my experience of like working from home and flexible working was always a privilege for, if you got to a certain level, then you got that freedom, if you like. And it was for the management, if you like. I think COVID showed us that actually there are a lot of roles, and you don't have to have a management title to be able to do that. There are equally some roles that are really difficult or you can't do from home. But equally, that's not for every role. And I think it's given us that luxury to be able to just look at things differently, and also ask your employer for a different approach to your work. And it does help with that bit of a balance. Like, Janae's gone to high school. He's going into year 9 in February. And he goes, it's wild, isn't it? And he would come home from school, but up until recently, Saffron's been here because she worked and studied from home. So I didn't have to worry about him being a latchkey kid because his sister was here. But now she's gone. She's been gone for like a month. And for the last month, he's been a latchkey kid. Right. And it's tough because you're like, oh my God, you're in a meeting and you're obsessively looking at your group chat. Okay, he's on the bus. Okay, he's home. Okay, like, what is he doing? And it's tough. But organizations like yourself have the flexibility of working in a hybrid model. Ahmed doesn't, because he's a teacher, he's an exec at a primary school. He's got to be on site. So having that flexibility means that I still do my hours, I still do my job. And for the most part, I end up doing more, because when you work from home, I always have this sense of, do people think I'm slacking off? I'm going to do 150% worth of work, because I never want anyone to think I'm slacking off. But it gives me the flexibility of just being here when he comes home. So there are some, I think, positives and some legacy positives that have come out of COVID. But yeah, it's just been a wild couple of years.
It is so interesting, though, isn't it? Because I think I'm terrified of Jasper. I mean, not terrified, but, you know, when he goes to primary school, he's going to be 9 till what, 3:30? Like, at the moment, 8 till 5:30 looks amazing in comparison. You know, just how do you make it work? But also on the flip side, I really do enjoy being in the office some of the time.
Yeah,
like a good balance, I think, is important for me. Like, if I go to the office and I have to, you know, leave at 4 to get Jasper, then I log in the evening. And actually, I find sometimes that can be my most productive time, because I'm not being bombarded by other people emailing me. So I'm like, I can get like off my list. And kind of flexibility actually is really important to me as well. Like, I can go to the office during the day, but then I can log in later. No one's necessarily expecting, but, you know, it gives me that opportunity to leave, pick him up, do bedtime, do bath time, have a good chat with him on the way home. You know, that stuff that's so important. But then I can log in later, and that actually, I think, has been really useful for me, like that kind of flexibility. And yeah, you're right, not everyone can do it. And I think, like, as a manager, there's definitely some like, well, how do I make sure this person's really supported when I'm not seeing them every day, and I can't do that kind of check-in, like, you okay? How's that going? The chat across the desk is so important. And like replicating that is, I think, a big learning curve for everyone, and me included. Like, I do think more in-person time can be built in, but you just need to do that in a way that means that people can have a life, because are you working to live or living to work? Who knows?
And it gives a bit of structure to your week. Like, I started a new job in October, and I work from 3 different office spaces by my choice, because that's where my team are spread. And then I try and do like a day a week from home, and then the 5th day, like, wherever I'm needed. But it means when I'm in central office, I'm not like head down, bum up, trying to frantically get work done. and then my team are just seeing this, and then they're might be thinking like, oh, she's busy, I can't ask her. When I'm in Central, I'm up, I'm about, I'm engaging with people, I'm doing, that's my time to do that. Not saying I don't do it other times, but it allows me to kind of structure my week. And then if I've got a paper to write, or something to do with the funders, or a report, it's like I'll predominantly do that from home. And on my working from home days, I try not to plan meetings on that time as well. So it allows you to kind of structure your week with some flexibility built in. It's just an interesting world, and I think a lot of people wouldn't have considered this approach before the pandemic. But
I agree.
And I think it also, like, the organization that I work for now is a not-for-profit feminist organization, and their kind of ethos is if girls and women thrive, everybody thrives, which is pretty powerful. And a lot of the time the CEO says, like, we have to have flexible hours, flexible working arrangements. We have to have these things, because a lot of those things are barriers to women being within the workforce or returning within the workforce, because that role has to be full-time. And she, one of the first things she said when I first met her was, every role across the whole organization, including the CEO role, can be full-time or part-time. So it's like they stand by it. And I'm like, yes, this is the place. This is why we have so many people returning to the workforce, is because we've got this flexibility, which I think is pretty amazing. So you touched on it earlier that you've got a new job. Congratulations. Can you tell us a little bit about the role and the organisation?